And welcome back to another episode of Civil Discord, your weekly dose of radical curiosity. I am the notorious BLG here in a new little studio, a new little office man cave that I have deemed the no women zone. But I am the notorious BLG out here in People's Republic of Texas, Maurice Jones, and with me again here more often than I am because I was moving last week and so many things happened, and so we had to push back a show a week. But again, here more often than I am is Amanda Ajax the Griff, the supreme overlord of liberty out there in the People's Republic of California. Amanda, how's it going?
It's going great. I was telling you, you picked the worst week to move. You really did. I feel like just the fates conspired against both of us with the week of your move.
Definitely. They sure did. Because, man, it was buzzing. There was everything going on.
Yeah.
I was like, and of course, I'm over here teaching, and the students are talking about everything. And they're like, oh, well, this, and blah, blah, blah. And I was just like, I got to keep my mouth shut. Can't say a whole lot. But just listen to the episode when it comes out, and I assure you we'll have a lot to discuss. So it'll be fun.
Yeah.
My bad.
No, you're fine.
Had to get some water before we get into these little topics. But first, last episode we did talk a little bit about Elon Musk buying Twitter and his hostile takeover. And what does he do? He buys Twitter. It was great. It is glorious. It's crazy to see everybody's response to him saying, I just want to allow people to speak freely. Like I want people to say the things that they want to say without the threat of being banned. In case you guys don't know, Donald J. Trump is back on Twitter.
Is he really?
Yes, he is.
Wait, is he seriously back on Twitter?
Yes.
How do you know this and I don't?
Unless it's a fake account.
Okay.
Unless it's a fake account. He is back on Twitter. He is.
Okay.
Like, it's got a picture of him and it says 45th president of the United States. Like I'm telling you, he is. It may be a fake account.
Is he blue checked? If he's not blue checked, I'm not buying it.
I didn't look into it that far, but I saw him on Twitter. I was like, oh, look, that guy's back. Oh, glorious. But you know what? It may not be him because he tweeted something about selling something. I was like, no. Nah. And then now I think about it, I was like, he probably ain't tweeting stuff about making money that way. But
I feel like I would read way more wailing and gnashing of teeth. Like, I mean, I feel bad, honestly. I feel really bad for hardcore leftists. This must be a really tough week for them. It's like a tough couple of weeks. And I'm not trying to make fun because I feel like so often their ideas and ideology is echoed in society and in the mainstream institutions of society. And all of a sudden it's all collapsing at the same time.
Right.
And I feel bad because we're more libertarian oriented. We're used to not getting our way ever on anything, whatever. Yeah. So like we're kind of, when things go wrong, when everything goes wrong, we're like, okay, yeah, that was the thing, it happened. But so many people they've never had this happen before.
Exactly.
And
it is gold. It is gold. But so I will probably be on Twitter a lot more. And honestly, little financial advice, if he's buying them at $54 a share on Twitter, last I checked, Twitter was at like $49-$50. So, hey, you know what? You could buy a few shares of Twitter. And then when he buys it up, you make a small little profit. Just throwing that out there. My class is going over stocks. We are finishing the year over investments in stocks. But nice. Elon Musk bought Twitter. Kudos to Elon. Interested to see how this plays out. Once everything falls through, once everything goes through and Twitter becomes and he takes it private, is what he's saying to do. So here we go. We shall see, but it'll be interesting. I'm ready to see people see their minds go crazy. You know that meme that of that girl crying in the streets when Donald Trump was elected.
I didn't know if it was a girl or a guy, honestly. The one that their heads back in the I'm just not gonna assume.
Exactly.
But I honestly didn't know. And the one where their heads back and like,
yeah, exactly. That one.
Someone's gonna freeze me doing that.
Enjoy. It's been like you were saying, it's been a rough couple of weeks for far leftist people and so forth. And they did that. They took that picture and made, was it 3 or 4 different things back to back. It was Elon buying Twitter. It was lifting up the mask mandates on airplanes. It was the what we're getting ready to go into, the leak. For those of you who have been living under a rock, the leak of the possibility of the Supreme Court overturning Roe versus Wade. And that has sent everybody in social media into some sort of uproar. Like, it has been nuts. Every single one of my feeds, like I'm scrolling through TikTok live, we're debating abortion, pro-life, pro-choice, pro-life, pro-choice, things of that nature. And I just watch it and just say, oh, you guys are wanting the government to do a whole lot. But what are your thoughts on this whole, I don't know to call it a debacle or what? I mean, because it has caused so much uproar. And I think people are looking at things people are looking at things wrong when they are addressing this issue. But what are your thoughts on this?
Well, first of all, I think the technical term is clusterfuck, but I also know that you can't say that. So we can go with debacle, snafu. I mean, it's just a hot mess. Catastrophuck is another one that I enjoy. Like that. Hot nonsense, a lot of hot nonsense.
Right.
Well, the first thing that I wanted to know is I wanted to get your thoughts on who you thought the leaker might be, because that's always fun to speculate, right? And I was thinking, I would say it's probably more likely to be a male than a female, simply because, and I was telling this to my mom, I said, well, men are more like, this is a very risk-seeking behavior, and it's also a very lionization-seeking behavior. This seems like something that a male would do more than a female. And my mom, just without messing it, goes, well, Amanda, I have no doubt that you would do something like this. And I was like, thank you. And I agree. But also, I don't think you meant that as a compliment.
Exactly.
But it's true. I would. And I'm not a good barometer for the ladies, as we've determined time and time again. However, no, I'm thinking it's a male liberal clerk, not a justice. My money is on someone who works with Sotomayor, simply because she is one of the more radical ones. And probably was leaking this partly in order to get Kavanaugh perhaps to budge off of the majority, because he actually, even though people don't think this, he is one of the more wishy-washy on overturning Roe v. Wade. Yes. And I think partly because of what he went through during his hearing. And I think this was an intimidation tactic that, who knows if it's going to backfire? Who knows if it's even the most recent version of the draft? However, I did see a few people speculating using names of clerks, and I just want to call that out right now and say, don't do that. This is pure speculation. What you are doing, it is not investigative journalism. That's not what you're doing. Investigative journalism is when you vet sources and you connect with sources and you put together a timeline. When you put someone's name out there and say, well, here's all this circumstantial stuff. They wrote against abortion or they wrote against overturning Roe v. Wade this one time. They're very, very pro-choice, all of this stuff. Okay, that's a lot of people. And, first of all, it puts the clerk in danger when you put a name out there like that with pure speculation. Secondly, even just disregarding that, let's say, and I don't think this will happen, but let's say we never find the person, but there's this rumor out there that this clerk leaked something that they did not in fact leak. And now you've put their career in jeopardy.
Exactly.
So I'm going to go with nothing more specific than it's pure speculation.
Yes.
Male Sotomayor clerk, and I have absolutely no information that would confirm that.
Right, and I probably I feel the same way. I was honestly, because at first I was like, this may be, and I know I'm going to sound judgmental. And you're going to say, well, Maurice, you can't classify all women like this. I was like, well, most women cannot hold water. Let's just be honest. Like, if there's a secret, they got to tell somebody. And if it's for something for it to be this big, for if one of the clerks, if she gets their hand on, again, speculation, they get their hands on it, they're like, oh my gosh, like, I gotta tell somebody. Like I've got like this is a big deal, you know, like it's been one of those things they've talked about overturning Roe v. Wade for so long. And the fact that people are writing opinions on it and stuff, oh my gosh. Like, so I would think my first thought was, hey, this is probably some female clerk out there working for somebody who wants to maintain Roe v. Wade, because I feel like the whole point of the leak was to get outrage from the I don't know. I honestly cannot tell you what the majority of Americans think on abortion. Like I just don't. But I would say they leaked this to get the reaction of the loudest people in the room everywhere they go. And so when you awaken that voice, people get to talking, and we'll get into some of the stuff that I've been hearing on social media or whatnot. But so at first I was like, oh well, it had to be someone of the female gender. But after I continued thinking about it, I was like, yeah, but I feel like they may be a little, and again, sorry for stereotypes, maybe a little too timid to risk their job and say like, oh, like, you know, I could my job and then something, whatever punishments or whatever you want to call them are doled out because of the leak. And so I was like, oh no, it's got to be a man. Like he is somebody who likes to take the risk, somebody who is very has a high risk tolerance, and say like, I will take one for the team because I need everybody to know that what is coming down the pipeline, so everybody can be outraged with me. So I am definitely in agreements with you on that, as far as it's probably some male staffer somewhere or clerk somewhere that said, hey, you know what, and then think about it, like if a name comes out and they say who it is, that name will live in infamy on the left forever. Like,
that's the thing.
Yeah,
that's
like
the thing.
They will have, oh my gosh, this is a person who fell on the sword for Roe v. Wade, and then they did that, and we took a stand for democracy and blah 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 and all that stuff. And so I can definitely see a male trying to I hate using this word, but trying to simp for women.
Oh yeah.
And saying, oh, I support women and this, that, and third. And like look at me. And then now he has like, all these women are good, you know, and I'm an ally for women and women's reproductive rights and things of that nature. And so I think it's I think that may have been crossed that person's mind when they said, hey, I'm going to be the one to do it.
Well, and regardless, there are people who are saying, well, the person's never going to practice law again. They're going to be disbarred or not admitted to the bar. I'm thinking, so what, dude? If we're playing Chutes and Ladders, this was an unqualified ladder. You know why? Because this person just got themselves the first ever chairship of Yale's new gender law department. Okay. This person is going to be, I mean, if Bernadine Dorn can be a Northwestern professor, okay, if Angela Davis can be a professor, this person has their career made now.
Well, 100%.
Far from ruining their career. They can have any contributorship they want. Be a tenured professor in 2 weeks.
Yes.
Once this all goes through and they're outed.
Exactly. So I think it's going to be interesting to watch out. And I don't know what will happen to this person. I don't, and to be honest, I don't know what should, if anything, mainly because I'm like, well, I mean, if all of this blows up, like my thought process has been, man, if this blows up the US, like to where there's secession and you really think like, I can't live with these people, they can't live with me because they are ruining my view on women's reproductive rights and things of that nature, then by all means, I'm not gonna call him a hero, but it helped move towards a direction that I'm all for. So
You and Tim Pool. Tim Pool wants a civil war. He's like, I feel like he's just salivating right now. Maybe Tim Pool leaked this. Who knows?
Probably.
Yeah, he's actually a law clerk. See, I don't think of secession as happening, but what I do worry about is I am worried that what we'll just see now are these retaliatory laws in both red and blue states.
Yeah.
So on the one hand, you have blue states where abortion is legal up till age 69, and they are, and I pick that number at random, and they're making, abortion sanctuaries that are taxpayer funded. And so I'm going to be in California and I'm going to be paying for people's out-of-state abortions. And then you're going to have, on the other hand, super duper red states that make abortion illegal in absolutely every case under the sun. And then the taxpayers are going to be funding the prosecutions of these women who have gone out of states, women and men who have gone out of states to get, trying to be really careful here. It's hard, okay? But now you can have an opinion on abortion because you can qualify as female for purposes, or you can identify as a woman for purposes of this opinion.
Literally, but and I guess now we've been able to identify a woman because they have reproductive rights. But evidently, I can have a baby. So if that's the case, then by all means.
Well, and I was very upset with Gavin with the good hair. I don't know if you know this, but Gavin with the good hair was talking about how this hurts women. And I was really upset because it was really intolerant. And I actually Civil Discord retweeted him and let him know that men could also get pregnant. See, the thing is, just so everyone is clear, I actually am one of those crazy people who believes that gender is a construct, and I do think that men can get pregnant because I think that gender is it's just a thing. I am very gender radical. I also acknowledge that this is hilarious, that we have to be having this back and forth, and how people are like walking on eggshells. Oh gosh, do we talk about women's rights? Do we talk about? But men can. People with uteruses, maybe. I don't. It's so delightful to me. But I guess we'll get into that a little bit more too.
I love it.
Yeah. What do you think of the whole this should be up to the states anyhow type of thing?
It's difficult because when discussing, excuse me, man, I can't speak, abortion, I've come to the realization, as most everybody else should, is that it is not a black and white discussion. There is no and for me being, I mean, you call me a radical Christian or however that works. I mean, I guess I am pretty radical. But I think I don't think it's as black and white as everybody likes to say it is, because if it was, then the debate for a lot of people the debate would be an easy one to prove. And you'd be able to call a whole bunch of people idiotic and stupid because you're literally arguing against something that has been proven now. So I think in that, my personal stance would be, if we are going to live in a place and we're going to have a government, and the government says, hey, we are going to protect the rights of every human that is within our borders, then I'm going to say that is humans, whether inside or outside the womb. That is how I view it. And so I would say that shouldn't even be a state's matter, because I don't think that terminating a pregnancy is good. Now, again, like I said, things aren't black and white. And so I would think I think decentralizing it is by far a better solution than what we currently have. I think the concept of, and I think it's better because I do think that it leads to people wanting to be around people who have their views. So if somebody who is, what's the old girl's name? She's had 5 abortions. She was on Charmed, the actor lady. I can't remember her name.
I don't know either, but I
think it starts with an A. Yeah, it starts with an A. She's
not. Yeah. Anyway,
she's crazy lady. But if people want to be around her and they have those abortions and so forth, and then you have the red states who Oh, some of them are extreme, but most red states have laws like most red states, like here in Texas, they've established a law of like, hey, called the heartbeat bill and things of that nature. But it also establishes like things, where they can sue the doctor. So it's not the girl, it's the actual the person who is doing the abortion. They sue them, but and certain things are like outlined to where in instances of rape and incest, it's different. Like it's not so clear cut. So even Texas, as red as people think it is and so forth, understands that it's very gray, and so they try to address that in a manner that's appropriate and so forth. And so I think a lot of these states really do think that way, because they know, like, hey, somebody is, if this is the case, then maybe we need to rethink how this process works, as far as, are we really going to go after this doctor because of this specific situation? Like, are we going to waste taxpayer dollars in that? And so I think leaving it up to the states is better than leaving it up to the federal government, because people within states can govern themselves better than somebody who's 5,000 miles away. But then again, I mean, and I don't want to sound like wishy-washy on this, but it's because it's not black and white. It's hard to say what is the best option. At least in my opinion, I can't say like, oh yeah, like the federal government should rule this way and this is how it should be done or whatnot. And then I don't want to say, well, if states want to allow, like New York, allow it up to 9 months, then oh my gosh, then they should be allowed to do that. Because if governments are instituted among men to protect their rights, then I definitely don't think that the birth canal is the distinguishing factor between somebody having rights and somebody not having rights.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, it's really funny because you brought up the 14th Amendment, and I mean, you brought it up without mentioning it, but you talked about states depriving people of life, liberty, and without due process. First of all, I know you and I are different on this. I don't think people should just be around people who think like them, and that's part of what
I don't either, but
honestly, that's part of what scares me about all this. Is I just am afraid of further and further polarization. But as libertarians, I think we are very quick to say, yay, states have questions. I think with, when we have, yeah, right. Yeah. When we have questions, first of all, that where we're worried about a tyranny of the majority in either direction, or when we're worried about something that has to do with equal protection. And especially with the level of polarization that we have now, I actually do see this as a 14th Amendment issue that should be decided by the courts. However, I agree with Ruth Bader Ginsburg that the right to privacy was not the way to go about doing this.
For sure.
I would say you read it as a question of personhood for purposes of 14th Amendment equal protections, where, just so everyone knows, 14th Amendment attends to persons born or naturalized in the United States. So fetuses aren't those. But they also attend to persons. They say, nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. So that becomes a question of, we're arguing about the personhood of an unborn human fetus versus the liberty of the mother or father, one of them. And to figure out how to navigate those interests, you have to figure out where personhood begins. And that's always going to be a religious question, even if you're not religious. It's going to be a religious question. But it is one of those issues that I think, because it's a 14th Amendment issue of personhood, that is for the court to decide. And honestly, I worry that now we just have these retaliatory measures, and it's going to waste more money, because this is going to keep on getting hashed out one way and the other. And I don't see this actually reducing abortions at all. So I don't actually think this really helps people on the right who are very staunchly pro-life. You can just go and get an abortion at any time in a state like California.
And I would agree with that. And that's why I think it's so difficult for me to say like, okay, hey, yay states, or hey, okay, hey, no states. Because if I'm a true believer that state, or that if I'm a believer of a human being growing another human being inside their body, that is a person, because believe it or not, human beings do not give birth to anything else besides a human. Like, regardless of what movies you watch, things of that nature, that is not true.
I saw an alien, though. I mean, like, Alien, though, it comes out of the guy's stomach, and it's really gross, and it's scuttles off. It's kind of cute for a second,
right?
And then it's not. Yeah.
So if that being the case, then there should be some sort of overarching thing. Again, if we live in this current society that we're currently in, like, I'm an ANCAP, so but that's my, and in my utopia, like all of these markets would take care of themselves. But again, I don't live there, so I have a federal government who makes decisions and should be protecting things, as in protecting your ability to life, or telling somebody that they cannot take the ability of a life. Is really where that comes in. And so I would agree in the sense of like, hey, like the federal government or the courts should be able to determine these things, and agree with you in the fact that outlawing abortions does not take away abortions. Like, that's not the case. And if conservatives were truly, and I hate using the pro-life thing, if conservatives were truly against abortions, they would figure out what is the cause for said abortions, like, and try to, because that's what we do. We're here to like dig down and find root causes for things. So whether or not, that's hey, people don't have, believe it or not, people don't have access to sorts of birth control or whatnot. Like, that is very much so. People don't realize I get people say, oh, well, condoms are everywhere and you can, and I'm like, okay, yeah, I get that. But you may not realize how privileged certain people are, because we live in a society where we think everybody has access to something and they don't. You go backwoods, rural Louisiana or whatnot, they don't have access to a whole lot of things, so, and then the idea of certain people don't allow, some people, maybe they're allergic to certain things and so forth. So if the conservatives would really find a way to attack the root cause, I think that regardless of Roe v. Wade being overturned, you would see the idea of abortions, or the need for abortions to decrease if things were being attacked in that way. But because we're so stuck on this, hey, is this right, is this wrong, and nobody's about problem solving, it's all about, hey, I had to be right, so who cares how to solve issues? We just want to talk about the symptoms and not the actual cause. And so that's just kind of where we are left today. And I think a lot of times people on the left even argue that they'll use points of like, or I mean, not necessarily left. Let me change that. People who are pro-choice will say things along the lines of, well, if you're really pro-life, then what about the child after abortion and things of that nature? And I'm like, I 100% agree. They're like, well, what about all these children being adopted? And I'm like, oh, you talking to the wrong one, because you don't even want to know about the adoption process and how horrible it is and how expensive it is.
It's horrible.
It's ridiculous.
It's the same thing. It's the same thing as the immigration problem.
Yeah.
Legal immigration is so terrible and so bureaucratic and awful. And that's the same thing with adoption. It does not need to be that restrictive, and it doesn't need to be that much red tape at all. And it's very harmful.
Yeah. And so and people who are pro-choice bring that up, and that's a good, I would say that is a good point in saying like, hey, like if you're so pro-life, why aren't you addressing this issue too? And I don't, and my thought is like, well, people are trying to address that issue. So no, it's not like nobody's ignoring that. It's just certain people focus on certain things. But it's a discussion that I think needs to be had. And I think people on both sides need to actually dig deeper and realize, okay, this is an issue. What is causing this issue? And let's address that, as opposed to, hey, you're bad, you got an abortion. Hey, you suck because you're pro-life. You don't care about women's reproductive rights. And then, oh, well, you don't care that life begins at conception and the heartbeat and things of that nature. And I will say I'm a bit biased because my wife is currently pregnant. Like, I mean, there's no way on God's green earth that I would even think about terminating the pregnancy, like at all. I mean, and even our doctor, and it kind of set me back, because we were talking about doing like genetic testing, and like, oh, well, because you can test for Down syndrome and things of that nature. And my question to her was like, well, why would we test for these things? And she's like, well, you could, because it could help you prepare, moving forward. Like, hey, what are some things that you could think about? And then she even brought up the idea of terminating the pregnancy. And I was just like, you would terminate your pregnancy because you have a down, and so thinking that is like, man, like people think about things like this, like, oh, I mean, and to me, in my heart, it's like, that's grotesque, because of how I feel about the situation and what I deem as life, and so forth. Like, my wife does not have 4 legs; she doesn't have 4 arms. Like, there is something else that she is using, that is using her body and her energy, and that she is feeding, to give the potential of life at some point here in the near future, kind of thing. And so it's an interesting dynamic to kind of navigate with my view on things. It's not necessarily that black and white, and how people should actually respond to it, being an ANCAP, and then also trying to understand, like, we live in America. Like, it's not just me, it's not just my utopia, it's actual America and how things are today, not how I want things to be in 20 years.
Right. And I've heard so many just crazy arguments that I think people think are good arguments on both sides of the issue. One of which is, and libertarians are very fond of what they call the evictionism argument. I do not think the evictionism argument is a good argument. I am a fan of what's called the people seeds argument, which sounds like a really weird name. I'll explain what that is. But the evictionism argument is basically kind of a weird version of the violinist argument. Basically, in evictionism, the argument is that, well, you can evict the fetus. It's sort of like it's on your property, it's in your property, and you're able to evict it. And I feel like that sort of maybe holds in cases of rape, but in cases where, if you invite someone onto your property,
right,
then you can't kill them in your house for being in your property. If you tacitly invite them into your property, you can't kill them for being on your property. What I do think is a more apt argument, in a way, because I kind of end up in the same place at the end of this argument, where I end up on abortion anyhow, is the people seeds argument, which is a thought experiment. It's that, so let's say that people grow and are created by having seeds come into your house, and they kind of are implanted in the carpet, and then they grow into humans. And so if you open the windows, there's a chance that the seed will come in and you'll get a human growing, and you can get screens and stuff. You can get screens to prevent the seeds from coming in, but occasionally the screens don't work and a seed comes in and then it starts growing. And so the question is, so what do you do? Or do you have the right to kill the people seed? And I actually would say at a certain point you do. At a certain point, if you are aware that there's something that's kind of, gestating like a seed for a plant, you are able to know that it's there and it's not quite sentient. It's, I mean, not that sentience is the qualifier here, but that you have, before it's able to feel pain and whatnot, then you sort of have not even a seedling. It's before it's even really rooted, you're able to take it out. And at a certain point, you shouldn't kill it. If it's sprouting up, if you got a head, if you got, if you even have like a little sprout that's coming up, then it becomes a dicier question. Harm to the other human notwithstanding, obviously, harm to the carrier notwithstanding. So I like the people seeds argument because I think it gets into the complexity of the abortion question.
Yes.
But the evictionism argument, I don't like it because, and a lot of libertarians just love it. And I think that's part of libertarians' desire, A, to make everything about property, which we love property, and B, to find a clean answer for everything. Just because you are a very principled person does not mean that there is one answer. That when you apply your principle to the question, you'll land on that answer. And this is part of the problem with foreign policy and libertarians too, I think. But there's actually not a really good answer. And you can be as principled as you want to be, and still there's not a clear-cut answer for this. And I think that, abortion and foreign policy are two areas where you've got libertarians who are just not willing to see that there's not a good answer. There's not a perfect answer.
Right. I think one of the, and I may have mentioned this earlier, but I think one of the best analogies that I've heard, at least for a pro-life argument, is like in breaking down from a libertarian standpoint, it's like so a lot of people who are pro-choice and saying you can't force somebody to have a baby and things of that nature because it's their right and so forth. But I heard this argument and I kind of thought about it. It's just like, well, what if you forced somebody to be dependent on your body? Like you force them to be dependent on your body, and then also you try to cut them off and say, no, it's too late. Like, is that appropriate? If you cause somebody to truly be dependent on you, and then all of a sudden now you're saying, oh, I don't want you to be dependent on me anymore. So it's your fault, but they're not, but they're not viable in their sense. Like, are you in the wrong for that kind of thing? And so it really got me thinking, like, I mean, because that's what they say about a pregnancy. It's like you forced this child to be dependent on you. And I mean, I wouldn't use the word force because I mean, I'd pay.
Right.
But in their mind, it's like hey, if you didn't want it, you made this child be dependent on you by your actions. And so now all of a sudden, because you have somebody who's dependent on you, like if you called it, I mean, I've heard people call them like a parasite, a clump of cells. I'm like, y'all are tripping. Like parasites kill the host. Like babies do not kill their host. I mean, it's that there are situations in which things go wrong and so forth, but like ultimately, like babies are not killing their host. If that was the case, then we would like we would not be at 6.7 or 7 billion people in this world. Like it's not how it works. And so I kind of heard that argument. I was like, like that's not going to, like, I don't like getting in abortion debates because of how gray it is. Because now I will sit there and watch it and say, like, that's a horrible argument to make. Like, you can't just this whole my body, my choice. And it's crazy how now all of a sudden my body, my choice is a thing when it came down to the vaccines. Oh no, it's for the greater good. It's like, okay, well, continuing civilization is for the greater good. Like you out here killing potential human beings. Then if you continue to do that, that's not for the greater good of society. But now you're forcing me to take this vaccine and you're telling me that it is. Like, I mean, it's crazy just to see a dynamic shift and just the mental gymnastics that people have to go through in order to say, oh, hey, I have the need to be right in every single situation.
So I had some fun because I was curious about this. And so I saw, do you know that Canada has released an official statement that U.S. women will be accepted through customs for abortions clinic procedures, no exceptions. So I saw that someone had written on this. By the way, it was in response to a question that someone said. A friend asked an interesting question. Post-Roe, could Native Americans set up abortion clinics on tribal lands for anyone to use, much like they do with casinos, regardless of state law? I thought that was an interesting question. I think the answer is yes, but with reservations. But anyhow, sorry, I had to.
That's good. That is good.
So, but someone else responded about this thing with Canada and how Canada is doing something similar-ish. So again, they're letting anyone in to get an abortion with no exceptions from the U.S. And I had a question, and my question was, as of 22 April, vaccination still appears to be required for entry into and out of Canada, though I could have missed something. It's true. Will this measure override that requirement and or costly quarantine requirements for unvaccinated people? This isn't a gotcha question. Now, in some regards, it was well received, and I got some interesting responses. In some regards, people were crazy.
Of course.
I would like to read some of my favorite, really MAGA-istic in some cases, replies that I received here. One of which was, let's see, why would they want unvaccinated people into their country? Someone else says, and makes a lot of assumptions in this reply, my major problem with your refusing to vaccinate, wow, it's hypothetical. Wow. With your refusing to vaccinate also includes the attitude that you shouldn't have to take any other steps to prevent transmission to others. Seriously, how costly is a mask, washing your hands, and not standing so close, for fuck's sake? Is this person that you do not know my life? But it was that was wonderful. I doubt they want unvaccinated Americans coming into their country. They're being generous enough as it is with this gesture. Someone else says, I'm going to bet that the people who want an abortion are also pro-vaccine. If someone who's pro-life and anti-vax needs an abortion, they can go get the vax.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
wow.
That was...
wow.
Then there was, let's see, pretty sure that the Venn diagram of people who refuse to get vaccinated and people who want to keep women in chains by making abortion illegal are two circles on top of one another.
Oh my gosh.
There were a couple more that were absolutely delightful. A couple, I didn't respond to that many, but for people who someone said, get your damn vaccine. I said, I'm not asking for myself. There are people who have made different choices with their bodies and are seeking protections over bodily autonomy. That made them angry.
I bet it did. I bet it did.
Here's the MAGA response. When you visit another country, you are required to follow that country's entry requirements unless you have a medical waiver deemed valid by that country. In this case, Canada, you must be vaccinated. Canada doesn't want those from backward countries spreading diseases. You want to apply that to I don't think this about any country, but that sounds like something a rabid conservative would say about the southern border.
Oh my gosh.
One of my favorites that actually did get a lot of pushback was people were not happy with this particular responder, which was good. But they said, yes, Karen, you will need to be vaccinated. Anyone who accompanies you will need to be vaccinated. You all need to be vaccinated even if you don't leave the country. Did you have all your childhood vaccinations? And most people then responded, you sound like the Karen, not her, which was nice. That was lovely. That was very, very lovely. But yeah, that was one of my little experiments. So the answer is that people don't recognize that they have this cognitive dissonance. And again, as someone who is really down the middle on abortion, I will say that if you believe that abortion terminates a life, then in almost 100% of cases, an abortion will terminate a life. However, not getting a vaccine in almost 100% of cases will not terminate a life, even if you do spread COVID to someone.
Exactly.
So it was quite interesting.
Oh man. Social media and all of this. Like I even somebody was talking about, oh, this is an attack on our democracy. How could they turn Roe v. Wade? And then they put all these clips of all of these Supreme Court justices being asked about Roe v. Wade, and they talk about precedent and things of that nature, and of course, like in their confirmation hearing, they give the, hey, I can't rule, or I can't tell you how I would rule. There's already been established being precedent and things of that nature, which is true. Like they don't know how they're going to rule because the case isn't brought before them on a specific manner, and so that if you're saying like, oh, hey, if if you're applying it to this specific thing, you say, hey, no, that doesn't apply here. We in the Supreme Court don't believe that it does. But if they bring it in a way where it says like, hey, this does apply here, then of course they're going to rule how they see fit. And you just see just this whole compilation of Clarence Thomas saying something, and then it's Amy Coney Barrett, and then Brett Kavanaugh, and just all talking about it. And then they had another clip of Amy Coney Barrett saying that she has to go off a precedent. But that was when she was doing her, it was like the district court or something like that, where she was, but before she became a Supreme Court justice, and just all these things. And the greatest thing that I heard was, this is an attack on our democracy. And I was just like,
of course it is.
And and of course, you know me, I'm like, hey, that's a good thing. Like, if you over here attacking, hey, that's a good thing. I don't believe in democracy one bit. I think it's horrible. But nonetheless, like it's crazy how you can say that's an attack on our democracy, as far as unelected people who are saying, hey, like, making decisions, but then turn around and say that a state who has elected people who according to you are democratically opposed to abortions, making it illegal, saying that that's wrong. But that's an attack on your democracy as well too, when it just shows kind of like what we were just talking about, the cognitive dissonance between they're not connecting the dots at any point. And so and they refuse, as in people who people on both sides, they refuse to accept specific facts. I mean, you get people on the right who will say, oh yeah, I'm pro-life, this, that, and the third, or whatnot, but hey, you can't tell me what to do. You can't tell me what to do because I've got this, that, I've got to make sure that I'm free, and that regardless of whether my actions impact somebody else, then I'm going to do what I'm going to do. And then they'll say, oh, but then the state has to turn around and they have to regulate everything for me, even though I'm free and I can make my own decisions. So on both sides, there is a lot of like disconnect between like what libertarians have been preaching on both sides. And a lot of times people will say, well, that's how they dog on libertarians, because libertarians, they're just living in a fake world and they just can't pick a side. And it's just like, no, libertarians, most of the coherent ones, the ones who actually have who are not just libertarian in name alone, they actually have thought process and have come to the realization that they're libertarian by understanding. They've deemed and realized that they will say like, no, like, we want to make sure that everybody is okay. We want to make sure that everybody has their way as best possible, and let's get to that in a way that doesn't, and I know I'm all about secession, but that doesn't result in civil war. I'm not, hey, you can secede without a civil war. So, but I ultimately think that that this is just going to be interesting. Roe v. Wade, I like, and people are talking like this is a done deal. Like, this is about to happen. It's just like,
it might not.
I mean, I remember they literally had like a whole like rally with congressmen and Vice President Kamala Harris out there speaking on it. And I'm just like, do y'all not know how this works? Like, I mean, and they later on down the line, once this ruling does come out and so forth, then yes, then we can say whatever we want to say or whatnot. But you were not allowed to sway. Like, Supreme Court should not be swayed by public opinion. That's why they're there for a lifetime. Like, that is why they are there. You should not try to convince somebody that their ruling is going to be wrong when they are not ruling based off of public opinion or what you feel. They are ruling based off of what does the U.S. Constitution say, and is this constitutional? If the answer is no, then they will deem so. If the answer is yes, they will deem so. And just because the Supreme Court says something is constitutional and it's not, then doesn't mean that you're correct. Goodness, they said forcing everybody to be on health insurance was constitutional. Like,
it's a tax. Yeah.
Like, oh, it's not a tax anymore. Like, yeah. I mean, so it's like they say a lot of things. So, hey, they said separate but equal. Mm-hmm. Like, let's Plessy versus Ferguson. Like, we're not going to act like, I'm not going to sit here and say that Supreme Court is the end all be all to morality or to the idea of what's right or wrong and things of that nature, because they're not, but ultimately stop, like, people, this whole uproar, this outlash on Supreme Court justices and trying to convince, the ones who are deemed to be conservative Supreme Court justices, convince them of, oh, you wrong and here's why, and you're a liar now because you went back on, you said you're not going to rule on Roe v. Wade and you're talking about precedent and things of that nature. Like, it's sickening. It is sickening.
Yeah, and there's bad faith arguments, and then there's bad readings of faith arguments. I wanted to share this, and it's a little long, and I have notes. I had to get it off my chest, and really, I want Ben Shapiro to take care of this because he's got more of a reach than I do. There is a Twitter rabbi. I'm going to withhold their name, although I don't think they would mind. I think they're very proud of these ideas that they have. But I respect this person because they're a teacher, and I have a constitutional, like, I have to respect and admire rabbis. And so I do. And I vehemently disagree with this person's opinion on this. So there's a rabbi who posted a Twitter thread. Well, I want to go through it because it is a really, it strikes me as a misrepresentation of Judaism to the highest order. Okay, for Jews who can become pregnant, access to abortion services is a religious requirement, asterisks, and has been for thousands of years. Surprise, kind of. Let's dig into some of the texts. Yes, let's do that. But first, let's remember that there is a joke that goes 2 rabbis, 3 opinions. The idea being that the entire point of the faith in so many respects is to argue back and forth. You cannot read a definitive commentary on anything. Yeah. You'll get one rabbi saying one thing and then all of this argument back and forth. We have a holiday where the requirement is to get drunk and argue, and that's one of the happy ones. Okay, so there are some things that this rabbi says in this thread that are correctly quoted opinions of various rabbis, and then there are other, and for each of those opinions, there is a rebuttal to it that is not quoted. This is representation that Judaism has decided this on really anything, right? And they haven't. That's why there are so many writings. Let's start with the Torah. Yes, let's do that. In Exodus 21:22, we get a clear statement that a fetus is not a person. We do. When men fight, and one of them this is an English translation. When men fight, and one of them pushes a pregnant person, and a miscarriage results, but no other damage ensues, the one responsible shall be fined. The Torah literally couldn't be more explicit. A fetus is not a human life. Okay, a lot to unpack there. First of all, the Torah could always be more explicit because every single word means a zillion different things. Exactly. That's why there's a practice called explication, which is where you try to figure out what the Torah means. Okay, the Torah could always be more explicit. Exactly. But as I looked at the English, or I looked at the Hebrew, in Exodus 21:22, it doesn't say pregnant person. It says pregnant woman. So I checked the Hebrew. Strangely, this rabbi doesn't seem to have a problem saying when men fight, which is also the translation. But he says when men fight and one of them pushes a pregnant person. No, it is when men, in fact, it's when 2 men struggle and strike a pregnant woman.
Yes.
The Hebrew for miscarriage is actually written as the child comes out. So when 2 men struggle and strike a pregnant woman and the child comes out, it actually can also mean the child is delivered. But in this context, I think it's pretty clear they're referring to a miscarriage. Here we have very clearly a fetus is referred to as a child. Yeah. In the passage that the Twitter rabbi refers to, in order to demonstrate that a fetus is explicitly not a living being, the fetus is explicitly referred to as a child. And in the rabbinic commentary on that verse, I looked at a couple commentaries, the fetus is referred to as the injured party, not the mother. Yeah. So the rabbinic commentary says that there's a fine that's extracted to accommodate the value of the injured party, i.e. the child. Right. That is the commentary. So, Twitter rabbi goes on. He says, in fact, in the Talmud, we are told clearly that a fetus is not an independent life by none other than the great Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi, who said that, quote, a fetus is considered a part of the pregnant person's body, equivalent to their thigh. Now, this is correct. This is indeed a quote, except he doesn't say pregnant person. He says pregnant woman. And again, I think there can be pregnant men, but what you need to do is you need to have the intellectual integrity to admit that the ancient sages did not say pregnant person.
Right.
Stop rewriting your teacher's words.
Right.
But going to the argument about the fetus being like the thigh of the mother. So this is said partly, it's said for a lot of reasons, but that argument has been used partly to justify the decision that if a pregnant slave is freed, then her unborn child is also free. And if a pregnant woman is Jewish, including by conversion, her unborn child is also Jewish. Basically, the thigh of the mother argument, as I understand it, has been used primarily to afford rights to unborn children, the same rights the mother has. It's like your thigh.
Exactly.
Your thigh is Jewish. Your thigh is free. Your child is free. It's not to take away the rights. That's not how the argument has often been used.
Right.
And in fact, the thigh of the mother argument has also been used to argue as a guarantee for the life of the fetus, as a prohibition on abortion, except in cases where the mother's life is in danger.
Right.
So the rabbinic reasoning here would be that, according to the Torah, you're prohibited from harming part of your own body unless it's necessary for you to save your own life. Like, you can't even get a tattoo.
Right.
Hashtag oops. But nobody is perfect. So if your fetus is like your thigh, just like you can't carve out your thigh except to save your own life, so too can you not carve out your fetus except to save your own life. So there is a rabbinic argument that says that's what it means. It's part of your body. You can't hurt your body. And then we also finally have this rabbinic law, which I did check, that there's this idea of the time of ensoulment, which is when your soul comes into your body. And that's the 40th day of pregnancy. And that's in the Mishnah, which the Twitter rabbi also quotes to a different end. But he does quote the Mishnah. And I'm quoting the Mishnah and saying ensoulment happens on day 40. So that's according to rabbinic law. Now, there are absolutely arguments to the contrary in other rabbinic sources, and I'll be honest about that. And there are rabbis who say that a fetus is not equivalent to a human life, but the entire point is that this is up for debate.
Right.
And then when you get all these, like the Gentiles in the comments being like, thank you, Rabbi, I had no idea. Do we still have no idea? Okay, like, please, this is why you can't do this, is because you'll give people the wrong idea. Like, oh, this is about religious liberty. Okay, first of all, yeah, anytime the mother's life is in danger, yes, abortion is permitted. That's virtually, in every abortion restriction, there's been a carve out for that.
Right.
But have the integrity, the intellectual integrity to admit that this is not settled, that we don't know, and then don't misrepresent the faith on Twitter so you can say, this is what the rabbis declare. No, that's never how it works. And I'm done. Thank you.
No, you're fine. I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
I love the fact that you called them Gentiles. I absolutely loved it. Like,
Gentiles in the comments. Gosh. The comments are only full, like they're full of Gentiles. It's just, thank you. I didn't know this. I had no idea. I'm like, really? You didn't know Exodus? Because that's also one of your books.
Exactly. Like, come on, people. That is literally the second book of the Bible. And
it's a great book.
And my translation says something similar.
Okay.
It was men and strikes a woman with child. Okay. And my translation said gives birth prematurely.
Oh, okay.
Or whatnot.
That is actually a valid interpretation of what it says. I have looked at translations that say miscarry, but what it could also mean if the child is delivered and there's no harm.
Yeah.
So that was very interesting.
It's interesting. And the same way that you were describing just like the Jewish faith, and as far as people just discussing, and there's so many things that are not set in stone as far as how things are interpreted. It's the same way in the Christian faith. Like, I mean, let's you got Protestants and Catholics, and then within the Catholics you got Lutherans, and you have Calvinists, and you've got like there's just so many different things, different denominations, and all because things are not settled. Like things are always debated, and different translations and things of that nature. People will say, "Oh, well, KJV is the best translation," and it's like, well, no. New American Standard. Oh no, ESV and things of that. And so there's just so much discussion. So for anybody to say, "Oh, this is exactly what it means," it's almost like saying, "Hey, the science is settled." Like that's literally what it's saying. It's saying the science is settled. It's just like science is never settled. Like, I mean, there are ways. Mainly, you don't know because you don't like things are being translated. And so you can't say like, I mean, if we talk about the word love, like we know, like when you talk about the word love, when it's written in Greek, like there's like a bunch of different words that mean love, you know? So it's crazy for somebody to say like, oh, well, hey, this is it. And this is the law. And this is what it is. And now you can argue, things because hey, this says this and this says this, and so you called it like explication.
Yeah
we call it exegesis.
we call it that too. Explication, like, exegesis.
Like it's exegesis, like here we go kind of thing. And so understanding that and knowing that things are not always so black and white, even on this, like even the abortion. And I'm pretty sure there are going to be Christians like, oh my gosh, Maurice believes in abortion. I'm going to tell you, no, I don't. Like, I'm just telling you that your arguments cannot be so black and white. Like there are situations in which you may say like, okay, like that makes sense. Hey, if it's 12 weeks and, or like ectopic pregnancies, like if the fertilized egg doesn't make it all the way, and it just finds a spot in your biology class in your fallopian tube, okay, or whatnot, and so that cannot happen. Like that is a pregnancy that will not last. Like the mother is going to die, and then the baby is going to die. Like, and so what do? They go through, take a little pill, you go through a little procedure, and it terminates that said pregnancy. So could you say that was an abortion? Well, I mean, you could say that, yes. If your mere definition of an abortion is the termination of a pregnancy, then yes. And I mean, so things like that do happen. And I understand that. And so I'm not going to sit here and say, well, that was wrong. Okay. Like, no, but, and so understanding that it is not clearly black and white, which is why I typically try to stay away from said discussions, because nobody agrees on the terms. Nobody ever agrees on the terms. If you don't agree on the term that if I go into debate and somebody says, hey, no, that sucker's a parasite, and I'm like, okay, if that's your viewpoint, there's no point in me having a conversation with you, because I'm not going to agree that that's a parasite, because parasites kill the host, and I don't think that babies kill their host. Like I'm just going to be honest, I just don't. And so that being said, guys, if you are whether you are pro-life, pro-choice, and I know people like to say pro-abortion or against abortion and things of that nature.
That's also dumb. Don't do that.
Exactly. Exactly. Like, no, not at all. Not at all. I do not approach things in that manner. Just know and understand that it is not so black and white as people like to paint it out to be. Like there are things in life that are black and white. This is not one of them. Unless you're defining the terms, which most people don't. Like, I've not seen one debate in which they define said term appropriately to where both sides can agree on it. And unless you're doing that, then you have to admit, like, it's a gray area, and we just move on. And the Supreme Court is going to possibly make a ruling, and when they do, the world is going to be on fire, and we're going to hell in a handbasket, and we're all going to die, and it's World War III within the United States. Just is.
Lovely note to end on. Lovely note for that.
All righty, guys. Thank you so much for listening. We only got to like 2 topics today, and we knew in the pre-show we're probably only going to touch 2 things, and one of them is going to be a big thing. So we didn't even talk about the Disinformation Governance Board.
No.
Oh my gosh, we're definitely going to have to touch base on that.
What happens when we skip a week? Yeah,
because go figure, who called that? I don't know. Maybe Nostradamus Jones. I'm just going to say.
We've got to talk about the Amber Heard Johnny Depp trial too.
Oh
yeah,
we
can do that.
That'll be fun too. Yeah,
yeah.
That'll be fun. But yes, thank you guys for listening so much. If you are watching live, you can see my background. I know my room is not necessarily as clean and tidied up as it should be. You can see a dog kennel. It's actually on this side. Sorry, you can see my dog kennel and then like a little thing with my Scentsy and so forth. But I have officially moved, and we're going to use a different platform. And heck, we may end up using this to go live in the YouTubes and the Facebooks and things of that nature, because this platform allows us to do that. So I'm super excited about that. So many things to come with Civil Discord Podcast. Please subscribe on the Facebook. If you are watching this video, subscribe to that. Please leave a comment and a like. Help us with those lovely algorithms to push this information out so they can see our lovely faces. Please leave us a 5-star rating review on Apple Podcasts. We know we are worth every bit of one of those 5 stars. If you leave us anything less, we're going to be highly upset with you. But nonetheless, I mean, do what you want to do. So this is you are free to make your own decisions. Body autonomy. You can push that button however far along you want.
Yeah,
exactly. Follow us on Spotify, wherever you catch your podcast. We are all over the place. I had one of my students ask me to say, "Coach, you need a podcast." I was like, "I have one. You guys aren't allowed to listen to it because I'm crazy. But if you do want to listen to it, here it is." So, and they found me on some random thing. Like somebody said, "You're on Audible." I was like, "Yes, we are on Audible." So,
hi, Maurice's students. Hi, guys and girls.
So, yeah. So, do all of that. Follow us on social media. In case you guys didn't know, I actually made an announcement on my Instagram today. So, if you followed us on Instagram, you would see exactly what that announcement was. So same thing on Facebook, but you guys ain't getting on my Facebook. So follow me on Instagram at Call Me Maurice. Follow us on Instagram at Civil Discord Podcast. Follow Amanda on the Twitter that Elon Musk is soon taking over at Ajax Griff. Ajax with the X and Griff, like Gryffindor, just the Griff part though. And then also follow us on Twitter as well as at Civil Discord Pod. Do all of that, and we will be back again with another episode of Civil Discord. Until then, y'all be easy
and stay fierce.